Anachronauts. Chapter A01, Anachronisms. Anachronism. Noun. 1. Something or someone that is not in its correct historical or chronological context. The steady clip-clop of hooves echoed along the roadway. They'd been outfitted with uniquely designed shoes, alloys tuned to minimize the impact from trotting along the hardened black surface rather than a more natural dirt path. And the steady puttering of an iron box underneath the cargo-hauling carriage was reassurance that their heavy load wouldn't be too burdensome on the upward climbs either. A standard arrangement, all told, for industrial hauling in this day and age. The non-standard part would be the driver. She wore a simple brown cloak, suitable for weathering the elements, but even under its concealing cloth, it was clear that this wasn't the heavy-set, well-armed, sort of burly man hauler that usually rolled along this route. A head and a half too short, and 100 pounds and change too light, to say the least. Not that that deterred the bandits any. In fact, it encouraged them, their leader stepping right out of the tree line, waving for his comrades to join him. Why bother ambushing? A simple human roadblock would be enough for a mere slip of a girl. It wasn't the biggest blunder that these generic thugs could have made, but it certainly was one of the classics. Right up there with, "He's just one man! We can take him easily!" and "Surrender to the likes of you?" "Hold where you are," the bandit leader demanded, raising his nocked arrow, pulling back the bowstring. "'Twould be unfortunate if I had to end the life of one so young, would it not?" On cue, the carriage rolled to a halt, the driver tugging back on the horse reins. The clip-clop clipped slightly, clopped once, then stopped. "You would be the Crimson Arrow gang, then?" the girl asked, face partially obscured by the hood, but not her moving mouth, tinged with an unusually blue shade of lipstick. "You've heard of us, then, of our total control over these wildlands, of how nobody gets through here without paying a toll. Excellent! That will make the task simpler. It seems our reputation has indeed grown," he asserted, swelling with pride. "Now then, there'll be no wood-cutting today, missy. We'll also take any valuables you have, and your horses. As I'm a gentleman, we'll leave one for you to ride off on. Don't worry your pretty little head about that. Although, if I may suggest, you might enjoy riding with us onwards towards adventure and riches. Far more enjoyable than returning to that pathetic little village." The girl tugged back her hood to get a better look at them, revealing an unusually silvery white hairdo, short and well kept. She studied the man, head to toe, evaluating him before making her query. "Please correct me if I'm wrong, sir, but isn't a bow and arrow a bit of a primitive weapon for your people?" she asked. "I'm not certain why I should feel it's a threat. Certainly the projectile would be quick, but with some skill, avoidable." The other less pompous bandits promptly raised semi-automatic assault rifles, backing up their leader's preferred huntsman bow. Clicks and clacks of weapons being primed to fire and safeties released punctuated their reply. "I see. That's more in keeping, then," she said. "Still, I'm afraid I'm not very concerned about simple kinetic metal pellets. I'd like to point this out because there's still time for you to lay down your weapons and surrender before you have to discover why I'm unconcerned." "Surrender?" the leader asked, trying to hold back the laughter. "To the likes of you?" And then the silvery energy blaster was produced. "Ah," she thought, "that's indeed more threatening." Before further unpleasantries could be conveyed, she threw off the cloak and became a brief silvery blur, landing neatly in front of the horses and crossing her shiny metal forearm braces in front of herself. When the weapons opened fired, a surprise reaction to her sudden movement, she hoped, rather than some true desire to maliciously do her harm, one arrow, 16 rounds of armor-piercing lead, and a beam of pure white light as wide as a man's fist were directed her way, and all of them deflected easily by the pair of domed force fields thrown up by her crossed forearms. "What are you doing, Una? Shoot these idiots!" another girl's voice called out from within the cargo hauler's covered passenger cabin. The irritated voice had to shout to be heard over the weapons fire. "Emily, if I drop my shields, they could harm the horses," the white-haired girl, hereby named Una, replied. She was holding her ground despite the numerous impacts against her defensive shield, but unable to act beyond that. "Oh, for the love of... Fine. Plan B." The strange word, twisted back onto itself into a language that was no longer a language at all, echoed with a more resounding force and volume than should have been possible within the cabin enclosure. But that sound was then drowned out quickly by the snarling, growling noise of strange creatures waking from slumber with deadly intent on their non-minds. Specifically, a swarm of chainsaws, now levitating out of the cabin windows, given magical life, which poured forth from both sides of the carriage and honed in on the bandits. The Crimson Arrow gang had faced down farmers, armed mercenaries hired by farmers, and even some of the more deadly varieties of enchanted beasts the wildlands could have thrown at them. But when a fleet of airborne saws capable of easily slicing through the age-old wood of trees start menacingly floating your way in full defiance of the laws of physics, it's usually time to use the pants lavatory. The panic fire redirected immediately, as the pack of animate lumberjacking tools surrounded them, this time aimed at the metal implements of destruction. Not that this had any noticeable effect on reducing the overall lethality of their situation. Bullet impacts simply caused the saws to spin in air a little before resuming their menacing. A reflective metal surface parried the energy weapon's blast before whirling in a sharp arc to cleave the metal ray gun in twain. A shower of sparks burst from the bandit's hands, the two halves of his stolen gun falling uselessly to the ground. Oddly, the circle of woodsmanly doom had left a gap, one that led down the road away from the carriage. Seeing an opportunity, the bandits took the better part of valor and ran for their lives, slipping through that crack in the defenses and fleeing. All save the leader, who tried to make a run for it and faced the saws again for his efforts. They let the others run, but the bowman wasn't going to be as lucky. "I know it doesn't look this way," Una tried to reason, while lowering her shields. "But honestly, we mean you no harm. All we want is information. I would like to reiterate my suggestion that you surrender. It would make this much easier for everybody involved." "I surrender! Oh God, I surrender!" the Bandit King screamed, falling to his knees and covering his head with his arms defensively. Airborne saws wobbled a bit before collapsing to the ground, enchantment fading. But when the leader opened his eyes and peeked out from under one arm, he now found himself staring at the business end of a surprisingly similar energy weapon to the one his cronies had found, although this one was in the hands of the girl in the metallic dress-like garment. "Who put you up to this task, sir?" Una asked, her voice not the slightest bit fierce, despite this technically being an armed interrogation. "We looked into the history of your Crimson Arrow gang. You're petty criminals, survival-oriented, simply stealing to keep your people fed and moderately wealthy. You have no reason to hassle the lumberjacks on their way into the deep forest. There's not nearly enough profit in it. Therefore, our guess is that you were hired. Are we correct?" "You are correct." That reply hadn't come from the bandit, however. Further down the road, where it was narrowest between the two sides of the forest, the trees themselves creaked and groaned, leaning inward, their branches crossed, forming a natural seat. Perched there upon the branches was a figure, wreathed in summer and autumn, colors of green and auburn. Her leafy feet did not touch the cracked asphalt road. She simply dangled there, idly swinging one leg, her glowing eyes bearing down on the girl. Broken lips parted. "You are a long way from home, little animal. You have no true stake here. You were no doubt hired to stop my animals, just as I hired mine to stop the ones who harm these forests. Money, such a silly human thing." "Ah, I'm not familiar with your species, Miss." "Dryad." "Miss Dryad," Una said, assuming it was a formal name. "But if I am interpreting correctly, then, yes, we were hired to clear the route so the lumberjacks could resume. The wood is needed to build communities down the road, shelters, homes for those suffering in the elements." "It's not my fault the animals are ill-equipped to the rigors of the season," the Dryad said with a shrug. "That doesn't give them justification to murder the trees. It does, however, give me justification to murder the animals. I've declined to, so far, simply turning them away. But now I see you wielding those murderous tools against my pack. I see the time for mercy is at an end. The weeds must be pruned." She held two fingers to her lips and whistled in the way wind slips between the branches on a breezy day. The trees began to move, parting the way for figures like her, thin and mobile and leafy, dozens of them, already surrounding the carriage. The girl took a step back for the first time that day. Wait, please, Miss Dryad. We can come to a compromise." No, we cannot. Slaughter the animals, children." Moving quickly, Una grasped the dial on the back of her blaster. One twist to the right, and it could have the lethal force needed to... what? Burn down a few of them? Not enough. Her shields were directional. They couldn't stop a surrounding ambush like this. And her friend Emily in the carriage, even with her strange powers, would likely not be enough either. A walking tree took one step onto the road, and was then swiftly jerked back into the depths of the forest as if a snare had pulled it backwards with incredible force. Because that's precisely what happened. Metallic twangs sang through the air, more snares firing, logs swinging, trees groaning under weight, and howling in rage as the entire forest was rearranging itself. A figure blurred between the shadows between the trees, pulling a wire here, setting off a trap there, making a quick improvised loop over a branch there. An ambush to ambush the ambush was firing off, and being adjusted on the fly to compensate for the heavier non-human foes that had wandered into it. When the majority of the mobile forest army was pulled to the ground or up to the branches, the figure finally emerged from the shadows of the Dryad's tree arch, appearing behind her, a metal pistol to her head. "Incendiary ammo," the boy spoke, his voice calm, emotionless. "If you don't know what that means, it means fire. Human shape means a brain here I can burn. If not, it'll at least hurt. Friends will be out of snares soon, I think. Doesn't matter. Call them off or burn." The Dryad's hiss was like crackling leaves, crunching underfoot. "This is merely an inconvenience, animal. You cannot kill me any more than you can kill the forest." The boy's other arm curled around her neck, hand raised to reveal a red push-button detonator in one hand, thumb on the trigger. "I push this, I kill the forest," he said again with no more feeling one way or another. No rage. Simply a series of facts being presented in logical order. Everything burns. This entire place. Everything. Doesn't matter. None of it. Decide now. Wait! Everybody stop! Wait! That voice was loaded with considerably more emotion. Emily the Witch, a young woman no older than her companions, awkwardly stepped from her hiding place within the hauler's passenger cabin. She waved her arms wildly, trying to get attention, almost knocking the pointy black hat from her head on the low cabin doorframe as she scrambled to get out. "This is so stupid," she declared. "Everybody, listen to me. Scout, hands off the trigger. Nobody needs to get shot or blown up today. Now, as a wanderer, one familiar with accorded bonds of wild forest, one respectful of nature's innate power and with respect due in turn, I hereby request peaceful parley until the sun falls behind the branches. Damn it, I demand peaceful parley!" And in that moment, the ambushes, the bandit, currently on his knees in a growing yellow puddle, the bombs, the blasters, none of it mattered to the Dryad. She focused her attention on the one in the familiar-shaped hat instead. "I know the smell of you," the Lady of Trees said, a note of curious surprise in her words. "A sapling of Lilith, and yet I don't sense her influence about you. You are indeed a strange one. However, you know of the accorded bonds, it seems, and are due respect in turn for your station. Very well, what do you offer?" Exhaling in relief, the witch pushed some of her irritability aside, trying to keep calm. "Look, not all of these trees are yours, okay? I know how Dryads work. You have a protectorate forest. You can't possibly claim to be defending the entire wildlands in this area." "I suppose not, no," the Dryad admitted. "So, you've got no rights to stop the animals from logging outside your haven. And as much as I know you probably hate it, you're overstepping your jurisdiction, and this crap has got to end. Respectfully, ma'am." "A defiant sprout within this one," the Dryad said, smirking, if it was possible to do so with lips made of leaves. "Very well. Keep the animals out of my protectorate. They will never be considered for respect as your kind are, witchling, but I will leave them be. You have my word. I trust you will make your friend disarm these animal fire devices?" Yes, of course. Fine. Let her go, Scout." The boy hesitated, no trembling, just considered the situation for a few more moments, rather than blindly obeying, and slipped down out of the tree, landing easily on his feet. The gun and the detonator were held aloft in a peaceful gesture, then set down. The Dryad remained in the branches, watching the trio curiously. "You keep strange company, sapling. An outsider with outsider spark, and this one. I would watch this one if I were you. His shadow may hunt for you now, but the wild hunt in him is not something you can leash. Keep the animals out of my forest, and you'll never see me again. Farewell." With business here finished, the forest guardian merged into the woods of the trees themselves, her arch splitting, trees seeming to visibly shrink back into the tree line. In moments, there was nothing unusual about the forest, leaving behind only tall oaks and empty snares. Scout gathered up his weapons before returning to his companions, and ignoring the suspicious glare he was getting from the girl in the pointy hat. "You never said you were going to plant firebombs in the forest," Emily said. "Just the snares, for Plan C, in case the bandits fled back into the trees." "Plan D," the boy said with a shrug. "Made sense to me." "I really don't like it when people get all secretive and make these kinds of plans behind my back. I thought we were in this together," she said, crossing her arms and tapping her foot, obvious body language that the boy paid absolutely no attention to. "And what did she mean about the wild hunting you?" "What did she mean about being a sapling of Lilith?" Scout countered. "Anyway," Emily said, changing the subject in the clunkiest manner possible, "we'll just redirect the loggers away from the Dryad's realm. Now that I know there's one out here, I can find a ritual spell in my book that'll clearly mark the borders. Guess we're done here in about freaking time. That paycheck had better be waiting for us when we get back to the village, but we're not eating tonight. Let's get out of here. Not just yet. The hunter and the witch turned to the silver girl, who still had her energy blaster aimed at the bandit leader, whose mouth remained agape in shock. Sir, now that you have surrendered, I have a question which is outside the scope of this particular task, but of much personal importance to me. Una spoke, trying to sound as reassuring as someone with a gun to your head can be. I would greatly appreciate your cooperation in this inquiry, and promise it will not detain you for... What? What? The bandit babbled, having trouble with the big words. The boy spoke up for her. He knew what she was going to ask. It was the question that would be dragging them all over the wilds after all. He knelt down and looked into the bandit's eyes. His own empty, passionless, but somehow conveying vast importance, and vast dangers beyond the scope of a simple forest road altercation. Where, he asked, did you find an orbital's energy blaster?